Hi, I'm Clésia Mendes, and welcome to Womanhood from the Inside Out. In this interview series, we'll be discovering and uncovering the nature of womanhood from the inside out. Why is it important? When does it show? How can we identify it? And what are the implications of womanhood from the inside out? And today's guest is my dear friend Molly Gordon. Molly is a master certified coach who has been searching for the meaning of life for as long as she can remember. Sometimes the search took place in the background while she waited tables, managed businesses, and worked in both staff and board or committee roles in a variety of nonprofits. And for 8 years, she had a fiber art studio called Mollycoddles. In 1996, Molly melded her variegated background into a career as a professional coach. She is known for helping clients uncover and trust their innate well-being and wisdom so that they can experience more confidence, clarity, creativity, and connection. And she is especially passionate about using the inside-out understanding to address complex and persistent global challenges. Welcome, Molly.
Thank you, Clésia. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you accepted my invitation. So let me start by asking, how did you first came across the understanding of the inside-out nature of life?
Yes, I had a telesummit for a number of years called the Self-Employment Telesummit, and Michael Neal was my keynote speaker in 2009, 2010, and 2011. And it happened that in 2009, he was just beginning to learn about this understanding, and it showed up a little bit in his keynote. And I thought, this is cool. Michael sounds better than ever. And the next year, he sounded really better. And by 2011, I thought, holy cow, what's going on with Michael? I'd always admired him. That's why he was my keynoter. But there was something very different. And so I started looking into what had been influencing him. And I learned about the inside-out understanding, about the insights of Sydney Banks, and the work that has flowed from that.
And I'm really curious, what have you seen for yourself? So you started the journey because you've seen that something had changed with Michael, so you became curious, and I guess you started your own journey. So what have you seen in the beginning? Could you just describe to us?
Well, it's interesting. In the very beginning, I was on cloud nine. I have been, as you said in the intro, I've been kind of looking in this direction for a long time. And most recently, I had trained extensively with Byron Katie. I was a certified facilitator in the work. And I think in many respects, what Sid saw and what Katie saw are substantially the same. But what Sid saw and how he articulated it comes without any strings attached, without any process, without any work to do. He invites us to look beyond tools and techniques to the simple, what I see as two simple facts. One is, you are okay. Already you are okay. And two, we experience our thinking. Whatever seems to be disturbing us or thrilling us in the moment is coming to us through the vehicle of thought. And I'd seen that piece about thought working with Katie, but I don't think I had seen the underlying well-being to the same degree. And it's that awareness and conviction that every human being, every being, it seems to me, is part of an unbroken and unassailable whole. And that whatever our moment-to-moment emotional experience of that may be, that there is something already perfectly okay going on. That knocked my socks off.
That is so beautiful. Sometimes when you are talking, I pause because I'm kind of, I don't know, I go somewhere else. It's so
Hmm.
beautiful. I'm just basking in that feeling, if you will. And for our audience that find discovering about you today, basically the way we met is I had a coaching session with you that
Right.
knocked my socks off. And then we got connected again, and here we are. So it has been very, very interesting. What else have you seen?
Well, like I said in the beginning, I was on cloud nine. For about 4 weeks, I was just on cloud nine. And it started to seem to me that that was the point.
Mm.
And without really noticing it, I became quite attached to feeling good.
Hmm.
And after that, it took me, that didn't last forever. I didn't feel good forever. People don't.
Hmm.
Our thoughts move, our feelings move, our experiences move. And our levels, our awareness goes up and down. And so for a while, it was really troubling to me. I thought, darn it, I didn't want to see this to have an ordinary human experience. I wanted to have a ticket out of the human experience. I want to get out of jail free card.
Hmm.
And there followed a period of a few years during which I was studying and more than studying, just really looking at and wondering about this understanding, wondering about the three principles, and wondering what does it mean to us if it's not about feeling good? You know, what's the point? And my understanding has developed over those years to where I guess now a couple of things that I've seen. One is it doesn't trouble me to not feel good.
Mm.
Is that underlying well-being that I found so liberating and so thrilling in the beginning. It's like I've rediscovered that, re-encountered that, and seeing that that's not something to use as a magic spell against the human experience. That's the substrata, that's the basis of the human experience. And that it's perfectly okay, besides which it's inevitable, to have a human experience, to go up, to go down, to have happy days and sad days. But the point of understanding, of the inside out understanding, or any spiritual understanding, isn't to escape being human. It's to somehow have a fuller experience of being human, a more, for me, it seems important to have a more compassion-filled experience of being human.
Mm. And that is a very interesting aspect of it, because is when I came across this understanding, or at least when I started looking with more intent about last year, one of the things that I've noticed, I came from a school, if you will, inverted commas, of the positive thinking. And it's amazing in the sense that I was able to create a lot of stuff. For example, if I get a no, that does not affect me because I think straight away, hey, how does it get any better than this? Because I can create so many other possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize how much thinking was attached to create that experience, because it's almost not exactly live in denial, but there was a lot of effort in order to create that, to be always upbeat.
Yes.
And I because I've done it for such a long time, I guess I had quite strong upbeat muscles, if you think about it. So when I started looking to this understanding, and I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I was sharing that with one of my colleagues. I used to feel fabulous, and today I'm only feeling great. What's going on with me? It was so unusual. And we had a conversation about that. It was like, yeah, but for most people feeling great, that is already, it's outside of their experience, because
Mm-hmm.
I was used to live, so it's all natural, by the way. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
but I was
Yes.
always feeling, used to feel fabulous, that all of a sudden I was just feeling great, and I felt like I was missing out on something. And then I had a conversation with a friend and say, well, we're just getting deeper into this understanding, and it's just recognizing that you're not losing anything really, and there is more. I was like, um okay, it's almost, how can I explain, like I was using artificial sweeteners
Yes.
before, and then all of a sudden I had a withdrawal. I became aware of that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I like that metaphor of the artificial sweetener.
Hmm.
I think a lot of us have learned to do that, and that's okay. That's one way to do life. Uh, but it seems to me that there's some value, and I don't know what it is, but that there's some value in the ups and downs of the human experience, or it wouldn't exist.
Mm.
That's part of the design. And to be, if nothing else, it seems to me too that human beings are inherently learning creatures. You know, we learn to walk, we learn to talk, we learn to make tools, and we learn both as individuals in our lifetime, and we learn as cultures and societies and collectives. And it seems to me that the ups and downs of our experience are somehow perhaps part of what educates us, what
Mm.
teaches us. What's different for me is that I used to think or feel that there was something wrong with not feeling great. But truly, if those ups and downs are part of a natural learning evolutionary process, I don't have to place a negative judgment on it. I may not enjoy it, but
Mm.
I don't have to judge it as meaning there's something wrong with me or something wrong with the world. It's just a less pleasant part of the ride. And that if I can stay alive and awake and engaged in my human experience and let my feelings and experiences, they will teach me. But if I try to manage it, I'm replacing a higher intelligence with my own. And that it's a process that doesn't actually need to be managed. It doesn't need to be managed, A, because there's nothing wrong, and B, because there's a great intelligence working things out, and I'm a part of it. And so it seems to work better when I get out of the way.
Mm. Yes. It's trusting, isn't it?
It's trusting, but it seems to me there's trust that we do as an act of will, and there's trust we do as a natural response of seeing something a certain way.
Mm.
And so I wouldn't want people listening to this to just make an act of will and trust because I'm saying these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like I would invite people to be curious. Could it be that it works this way?
Mm.
Could it be that when you're having a bad day, if you're having sad feelings, could it be that those feelings, if we don't get in there and judge them and manage them and manipulate them, all by themselves may have something to teach you?
Mm-hmm.
And we may not even have words for what we're being taught. So it seems to me that sadness has something to teach us about love. That's just how it looks to me. And that when I don't get in there and try to manage my sadness, something happens to my heart and it gets softer and more open.
Mm.
And so if that's true, preventing sadness would be a real limiting strategy.
Yes, I'm open to the possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about love, and the other day I was watching one of your programs or one of your shows, and you were sharing your experience with your husband, Miles.
Yes, Miles.
and you were saying that this is what I heard. You didn't plan to fall more and more in love with your husband, but every single year gets better. So what's going on for you? Can you share the
Oh my
secret?
goodness. It's so good.
There you are. I'm already having fun. You haven't started yet.
You know, we joke that God or somebody had pity on us and just fixed us up with each other because neither one of us was competent to make this happen any other way. It's I truly do love my husband, and I feel very deeply loved by him. And as far as I can tell, a lot of that has to do well. There was a morning many years ago, over 30 years ago. We had been separated for a while, actually, and had gotten back together and had been back together for a couple of years. And I was sitting in our kitchen, and Miles was away at work, and it just struck me out of nowhere. I thought, Miles loves me, and there's nothing I can do about that. Oh. And it's like, I didn't earn it. I don't deserve it. It was a realization that whatever he loves in me, and this is just how it's always seemed to me, from the beginning, it seems to me that Miles sees something in me that is truer than my personality, that's truer than my moods. He sees something essential in me, and that's what he loves. And that's not going anywhere. And Clésia, I felt as if a whole load had dropped off my shoulders. I thought, this isn't something I have to live up to. It's not something I can live up to. And it's not going anywhere. And I can relax. And ever since then, seriously, ever since then, it's just been amazing. If I do anything, I do two things. I allow myself to remember and notice that I'm loved. And so when Miles says something nice, often when people say something nice to us, we go, yeah, right. So the other day, this is too much information, folks, but here you go. The other day, I'm leaning over out of bed to get a cup of tea, and Miles says, nice ass. And I'm thinking, not so much. I'm 62 years old.
Wow.
I know.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, so there's a part of me that's going, yeah, but not really. And another part of me, it's like, yep, that's what he sees. I'm buying it. I'm totally buying it. I could go to, he's just saying that. He's saying that to make me feel good. He's saying that in hopes of sex. He's saying that as a joke. He's saying blah, blah, blah. You know where we go in our heads. When Miles says something nice to me, I take it at face value. It's a gift. I accept the gift. And I do that consistently. Yeah. And the other thing I do is I just appreciate the heck out of him. Mm-hmm. And it's going to sound like a doing, and it's really not. It's more of an expansion of my capacity to notice and appreciate this amazing gift I've been given, and a choice to celebrate it and mark it and name it. So when he takes out the garbage, I say, you have no idea how hot that makes me. Ooh. Because it does.
Let me take notes. I let someone go because he didn't used to take the rubbish out. That really.
Well, there were years when it was all about what is he doing? What is he not doing? Yeah. And one day it occurred to me, it doesn't matter what he's not doing.
Right.
All that matters is what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that was another transformative moment. The first time I ever said, you have no idea how hot it makes me when you take the garbage out. I'll tell you, that was probably about 15 years ago. He has not missed a day since. But again, if we just do that as like a technique, a trick, you're not going to get the same results. So what I would just invite people to do is to notice and honor whatever it was they fell in love with. That's really what I do. I choose on a regular basis to come from the place I was in when I fell in love with him and to trust the place in him that fell in love with me. And that's our playing field. That's our home base. And that's really important to me. That's really, really important to me. That's, for me, and this may not be true for anybody else, but for me, that's 1,000 times more important than who took the trash out or who's going to shop or who's going to vacuum or who's going to do what. And the interesting thing is, since I've allowed that to be front and center and everything else to be a detail, a lot of the details have worked themselves out. You know, it's just, I just feel so lucky. So lucky.
Yes. That is beautiful. And it was a bonus. It wasn't planned. It was and yes, I guess it makes a lot of sense if you keep remembering why we fell for each other to start with.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We can build on that feeling that was there, or we can torture ourselves by looking at the gaps between what we think we want now and what we think we have now. I don't know. There were many years where it made sense to me to be super critical of him. And I'm just so grateful that I woke up out of that one day. It just doesn't make sense to me anymore. It doesn't make sense to me at all.
Yes. So I guess we do evolve.
Yeah, I guess so.
Now, if, for example, for someone that is watching the show or is hearing about the principles for the first time, and they heard you saying that in reality, we experience our thinking, right? And the person is hearing for the first time and they can't wrap their thinking around it. How could we explain in a different way?
Yeah. It's really interesting. You know, I've been studying the principles for a little bit for 7 years and a lot for 5. And I talk less and less about the principles in some ways. For someone who's, first, we talk about 3 principles, right? Mind, consciousness, and thought. But what makes sense to me is to share the story that Sid shares about how he woke up. This innocent welder with a 9th grade education who is not shopping for enlightenment finds himself at a marriage encounter weekend in the 1970s. And he wasn't real excited about being there. It's the middle of the weekend, and they're on a break, and he's taking a walk apparently with somebody else who was there, who I think was actually a psychologist. And they're comparing their sad stories about how unhappy they are, and talking about how anxious they are. I'm more anxious than you are. And the other guy says to Sid, you're not anxious, you just think you are. And that was enough. Those words just somehow popped open his mind so he could see that what he'd been calling anxiety was a projection or an artifact of mental processes. And over a period of 3 days, his experience expanded, and he began to teach about what he saw. And he didn't even have the language of the principles at first. He talked about living in a good feeling. He would talk about just being present in the moment. He would talk about innate well-being. He would talk about everyone being fundamentally okay. And over time, there developed this language of principles, and I won't tell the whole story of how that came about, but I think it's important to connect with the underlying feeling of what Sid saw. That feeling that there's a wholeness, and we might call that wholeness mind. That there's an intelligence, an energy, formless energy behind everything that is. And that each of us come out of that energy. And in the principles, we call that mind. And that out of that energy, one way that energy takes shape is in what we call thought. Mm-hmm. And in the principles, thought is much bigger than the conscious ideas that I formulate in my brain. It incorporates all mental and neurological and perceptual and emotional activity. And the core insight is that if I'm having an experience, it's coming through that medium of thought, that it's not out here in the world. The world out here is not causing me to feel a certain way. My feelings are creating an experience of the world. And what that ultimately means is that the world out there can't hurt me. Mm-hmm. And it can hurt my body, absolutely. Life and death happen in this world of form, but that there is something underneath that that's enduring and unassailable and permanent and whole. And another piece of it is how this world of thought is always moving and always changing. And so one day I look in the mirror and all I see are jowls. And another day I look in the mirror and I think, not bad. You know? And those might not even be days. Those could be minutes apart. Mm. We're always having a changing experience. Thought is always moving. And one reason we don't have to worry about the experience we're having now is like they joke about the weather in Alaska, just wait a minute and it will change. If you don't like the weather now, wait a minute. If you don't like your thinking now, wait a minute. But what we've tended to do as human beings is we've tended to get worried about our thinking. We've tended to worry about our experience. Some of it's unpleasant, as we've said. And so we've thought that there was something we needed to do to fix it. And one of Sid's key insights was that when we try to fix our thinking, we're actually mucking up the works. We're getting in the way of a natural process that doesn't need our help and that has not hurt us. And that if we keep our hands off, the weather will clear and the sun will come out again. And what's that has done for me is just taken a whole lot of thinking about my thinking off the table. Does that make any sense?
It does in a sense, and then a question popped into mind, so I'll express it. How about people, for example, who have been experiencing depression for many, many years?
Yes.
What's going on for them?
Yeah, well, they're experiencing their thinking too, and I experienced depression for many, many years. I've had that experience. And whatever, let me just get quiet for a second before I answer that. Mm-hmm. it looks to me like at least two things were going on during the times when I have been depressed. One is that I had experiences in thinking that produced low feelings. And the second thing is that I worried about those low feelings.
Mm.
And that created a cascading effect. And I don't know how it is for other people with depression, but it really looks to me like my depression grew roots the minute I turned it into a project. It's like, now I have depression. Now I got something to worry about. Now I've got something to work on. And I actually noticed this the last time I went through what I thought of as a depression, because I've had, I think, 3 episodes in my life. And the last time I went through it, it started with a lot of anxiety, and it was right about the time I was going into menopause. And I was having intense experiences in the mornings that you could call anxiety. I would just feel tight, and my brain just didn't seem to want to work very well. And I remember sometimes in my desk chair just feeling like I was pinned to my chair. I would actually take this posture and just breathe for a few minutes in the morning. And around that time, a friend was going through what he called depression, and I got the idea that maybe I had depression and that I ought to treat it. So I went to a psychiatric nurse practitioner, and not too surprisingly, she agreed and she put me on medication. The thing is that anxiety experience did go away, but I went into a weird state for a number of years where I feel like I had made depression a project. It was all about managing depression. So I was either in depression, bad, not depressed, good, but I always had depression, bad. And it became self-reinforcing. And when I came upon the principles, and this is an individual journey and for individual people, I think that there's an interrelationship between the mind and the body. There's real stuff going on. You know, I also had breast cancer last summer. I didn't try to use my mind to get over my breast cancer. I had a double mastectomy. Thank you very much. Surgery looked good. So I'm not saying people should do medication or not do medication, but it looked to me like the way I was thinking about depression was 99% of my problem. Mm-hmm. And I weaned myself off of all that medication over a period of a year, and that was quite some time ago. And there are mornings when I'll wake up and I'll feel a weight on my chest. And in the past, that meant to me that the depression might be back. And I would have a project. Mm-hmm. Now what it means is I wake up with a weight on my chest. I'm experiencing my thinking. I'm going to see what happens next. Usually, by the time I've brushed my teeth, I've forgotten all about it. Mm-hmm. And that to me is really worth noticing. That there's a way in which when we worry about our thinking, we hold our thinking in place. And so whatever depression is, for me, worrying about having a low state of mind and turning that low state of mind into a diagnosis that by definition persists over time created something that looked like it was persisting over time. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I dropped that label. I started looking at my experience moment to moment. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm sad. The weather, weather Molly is always changing, and it doesn't look to me like I'm depressed anymore.
That is powerful. Mostly, so many things, but mostly what I heard is that once you drop the labels, you're not so attached, right? Because once we
Mhm.
recognize that is the nature of thinking that is transient, the yes, the nature of thinking that is transient. So we are always feeling our thinking moment to moment to moment, and
Mhm.
changes minute to
Yeah.
minute or whatever. We're not putting so much focus attention, then things just flow naturally.
Right.
And it's the fact of putting focus, intention, and attention to it that just makes the experience seem permanent while it's
Yes.
not. We keep just recreating it, but it is not
Yes.
permanent.
Yes.
It's an illusion.
Yeah.
Wow. And I want to thank you, Molly, because so many things you revealed today that I had idea, not so I had no idea. I love the story you talk about Miles when he complimented your derriere, and
Yeah.
love it, love the story. And you just share what happened for you last year, and it sounded that you had no thinking. This is what happened. This is what I've done, and thank you very much for that. And yes, I'm
Yeah.
enjoying my life.
Yeah. That's pretty much how it was. And it's funny because um, I the whole cancer thing was really interesting because it just wasn't a very big problem.
Hmm.
And I'm really grateful for that. I'm really grateful for that. It just didn't seem like a big deal. And at the same time, when I share that, I feel like I need not to be seeming to give the message that people shouldn't worry about cancer, because everybody should have the experience of life that they have.
Hmm.
If there's one thing I'm really seeing more and more all the time, it's that there's not a right way to do life. And that the biggest barrier in my life to living fully and wholeheartedly and learning and celebrating has been looking for the right way to do it.
Mm.
So I feel very grateful that I have this amazing relationship with my husband. I feel very grateful that I went through breast cancer and bilateral mastectomy without a lot of fuss.
Hmm.
And I'm just trying to think right now of what things I've made a fuss over um, that are trivial. It's not like I'm sitting here in Suquamish doing life perfectly.
Hmm.
That's not the point. These days I've got pain in my hands and my neck, and I'm not sure what's going on with it. And I have a lot of thinking about it. I have thoughts that it's psychosomatic, and if I'm so smart, why am I having this happen? I have thoughts that I should work on it. I have thoughts that I shouldn't work on it. I have thoughts that I should go to the doctors. I have thoughts that I shouldn't go to the doctors. It's nuts.
Hmm.
But the funny thing is, even that's not really a very big problem.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just like we show up, we do life, we do our best, and see what happens next.
Yes. And I guess there is a lot of freedom in that, because I was remembering when I originally had the idea of the Womanhood from the Inside Out series. my, the original idea was, oh yes, there are so many labels and so many ideas that the media try to sell us, and how you are to be, how you are supposed to be the perfect career woman, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter, the
Right.
perfect this size 6, all of these things, and we're not super women, and that is tiring, right?
Yes.
So, or either people are pretending, so they are faking it, or we are exhausted, so what exactly is going on? And as I have been going through the show, number one, my vision evolved, right? My own image of myself evolved. And number two, I'm loving to hear other women's experiences. And when you then say there is no specific, a certain way of doing life, we all have our own experience. I find that so freeing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, Molly, I'm curious, how can people find you?
I have a website
Mm-hmm.
called shaboominc.com. That's ShabooMinc.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on Facebook, Molly Gordon. And you mentioned my videos. I usually do a weekly video on Facebook and on my website. And I have a monthly e-zine on my website as well.
Yes, which is fabulous. And the last time I checked, you were about to start a course as well. Have you started
Yes,
yet, or?
it starts a week from tomorrow. It's
Okay.
called The Art of Living,
Mm-hmm.
Creating Magic and Meaning in Life and Work.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be talking about a lot of the themes that we've talked about today.
Oh, that is wonderful. So for me, for the people who would like to reach me, you can go directly to Facebook. So that would be facebook.com/Clésia.Mendes, and I'll spell that. So that would be facebook.com/CLESIA.MENDES, or you can go straight to my website. So that would be www.clesiamensch.com. Now, Molly, what would be your parting thoughts for our audience today?
Parting thoughts. Make it good. Oh, dear. Oh, what comes to my mind is something that occurred to me last summer when I was at a very low point, actually. And the thought that crept in at that low point was that everyone is always doing their best, including me. And that was an eye-opener when I was feeling very bad and feeling bad about myself, to consider that I was doing my best. And it kept me from beating myself up in that moment and softened my heart a lot. And so I would just like everyone to know that I know you're doing your best and that it is good enough. It always is.
Oh, thank you very much for that. So for our audience, thank you very much for being with us today, and I'm looking forward to connect with you again next week. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.
See you.